talking about Uncle Friedrich. I don't know.
Uncle Friedrich is just one of them. The entire family, as far as I know, I mean at least, well, as far as I know is the point, came from a town called Giebelstadt, which is means city of gables, basically over large village,
Yeah.
which became very important in the post-Pfeiffer period. After they left, basically they went to Würzburg, most of them. Giebelstadt became important because when after World War I, when the Germans cheated, of course, on their peace treaty, they were not supposed to build military bases. Giebelstadt became a secret base of the German Air Force, which in developing it, and they hid their planes there. They had to back. Well, that's not very important for the story. Uncle Friedrich Pfeiffer was the name of the family, as well as his brother, which was known Uncle Samuel. I mean uncle because they were my mother's uncles. That's really the thing. And my mother's mother, my grandmother from that side, she became a house caretaker of a famous rabbi who founded a rabbinical seminary based on orthodoxy and on general studies, which was very unusual, but was very German at the same time. Also became very famous translator of the Bible and religious texts. So that was basically the background. Uncle Friedrich and his brother in Würzburg founded a textile and fabric business, which did quite well. Don't know very much about this and can't tell you very much about him, but in that town of Würzburg, they both were very active in supporting a Jewish old age home. Very important. And then, of course, during World War I was extremely important. They get enough food for these people, find medical help, and so on. Well, that is the real story now when Friedrich was drafted. Not only was he drafted to an Alpine hunter regiment, which were extremely tough soldiers. Well, I'll continue now. I mean, most of it, you should know that most of my material is, of course, second-hand, except for some of it which are eyewitnesses, but not most of it. Anyway, he came one of these Alpenjäger, which was a mountain regiment for the mountains in the Alpine areas south towards Italy, from Bavaria towards Italy. Now, the general reputation of Uncle Friedrich as a soldier was very, very important, very good, unlike the story I told you about Alex, the Petach Tikva outfit.
Right, yeah.
But he was, and the first story I know, his attempt to conduct a Jewish life in the middle of the war, up the hills and down the hills, and it just must have been extraordinary. And there was Sukkot.
Yeah.
And at Sukkot you have to sit in a sukkah.
Right.
Now, how do you sit in a sukkah in the trenches, in the mountains and the Alps? Well, Uncle Friedrich sat in an empty ammunition box, about this high,
Yeah.
but it had holes in it on top, and he sat in there to the great amazement of everybody else
Yeah.
who sat in the trenches.
Yeah.
And they said, well, this is crazy.
Yeah.
You can't sit in there in the open.
Right.
You have to get in the trench because they shoot all over the place. And Richard says, well, if they shoot, they shoot. What can I say? But on sukkahs, I have to sit in a sukkah. And he had to explain to these moronic Bavarian peasants why sitting in a sukkah is good.
Yeah.
Or is required. The story goes that in one of the shellings that happened, a neighboring trench where everybody sat in the trenches was wiped out. At which point the reputation came, sukkahs is the only place you are safe in the mountains in the fighting against the Italians. Maybe against the Italians that had some point, but they were not. Okay, this is the first story I know of Friedrich, and as he related later, and people who know him related it, it seemed to him very funny what he has done, even though he felt he did the right thing.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, as some other people explained to him, under the circumstances, to sit in the open in an old wooden box, which was an ammunition box, that is not required by Jewish law. That's understood. And Friedrich said, well, it's one of those jokes of Jewish law.
Yeah.
But you have to obey, even though they make a joke out of it, or you make joke, or himself he found it was very funny in retrospect. That's about it. Of course, then came the time when, after the war, when he left, he was, in a way, you might say, a proto-Zionist of that mishpocha, because he bought land and built a home in Jerusalem quite early. That place, of course, I know because I went there for summer vacations. When we came to Israel, it was Rehov Betzalel, it was called. It was on the top. It started where Jewish Agency building was, and then I went by the old Betzalel Museum, was Rehov Betzalel. After the second, what am I talking about? I mean, after the first war for what they call independence in 1948, they changed the name to Rehov Narkis.
Yeah.
And after one of the commanders in Jerusalem, a quite famous Tzahal commander. Now, during that particular war, he was famous because, among other things, he had somehow, for reasons I don't understand, he had an old Mauser rifle brought with him to Israel. He must have smuggled it earlier when there wasn't much control. And when Jerusalem was shelled by the Legion, the Arab Legion that had come in under the command of this British general, what was his name? The commander of
Glub? Was it?
Which, yes, that's right, Glub Pasha. He became Glub Pasha under the Transjordan. They shelled Jerusalem, and Uncle Friedrich was on top of his house in Hof Betzalel up there, and what he had learned in the German army or in his youth, he knew how to yodel, a very high-pitched yodels, and he fired his rifle in the direction of southwest into Deryasin. Where, he never hit anybody. It's impossible. That was the range of that. He couldn't see anybody. But he did fire and yodeled. And again, only from second, third rank sources I have discovered that yodel was an extremely powerful, had impact on Arab villages around Jerusalem. They didn't know what is going on, and then it was a yodel, and then they heard a sort of a weak shot coming after that. It must be very terrible. That was, of course, another contribution of his evolution as a funny person. But beyond that, well, he had, that was after, after the siege was broken and the normal condition. I mean, who knows Rome, what normal was in those days. He had some kind of reputation as a funny person, and of course the most funniest, and this, you knew that because I had told you that, I bet, was his how he handled Purim. You know the story. Oh, you don't know the story, then you know anything. Can't any understand him at all. What he did on Purim. He filled his pockets on both sides of his jacket or whatever he wore with coins, the agorot.
Okay.
The small agorot.
Right.
It was the equivalent of pennies in Israel, so to say. And he went to the number 9 bus stop, which was near Bezalel and King George. And that's an important bus which goes through the town and ultimately in the direction of the university on top.
Okay.
So lots of people take it for getting through the city, and then, of course, students also to go to the university. And he got in there, the bus stopped. He got in and he said to the driver, "Kama ze ole?"
Yeah.
How much is the trip? And the driver says, "Well, 10 agorot, 20, I don't know what it was." And he says, "Oh, tough." And he got in his pocket and took out one hand and from this part, one another, and dropped all those agorot all over the front of the bus, and the rest fell down the steps on the street.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Oh, I have to pick it up." And he got out of the bus and started picking up one after another. And the people in the bus sat. They were trying to get somewhere. And they started shrieking to the driver, "Go already!" And he said, and he said, I can't run over this man. And they said, "Run over him! We have to be there." That was one of the high points of his Purim.
Yeah.
He did a number of similar things, driving everybody crazy, including disguising himself and ringing the door to people he knew. And he also changed his voice a little bit, had a big beard stuck on, and he says to these neighbors of his, give us a matana for the holiday. It's Purim, I want to buy myself a cake or something. And some of them just slammed the door. I mean, he lost a lot of friends that way. A lot of friends. Because he told people saying, "I know this guy never give anything." So that was the other one, just normal things that he did. They had the famous afternoon, there is a card game, which is, I don't know it. It's Skat. It's a German card game with cards like people meet to play here with, what do you call it? It's not a difficult thing, but apparently, and they had this afternoon which rotated between these acquaintances, of which he was one, other 5, 6, and of course that famous Stoke. After that, they had coffee and cake, and Uncle Friedrich, of course, is the one who went, and that's one of the minor contributions. He went around and asked, "What would you like? Coffee, cake, coffee, tea, cocoa, anything?" And each one said something, whatever. He says, "We have everything." And of course, then after a while, he came out of the kitchen, went out of the kitchen with a big pot and said, "Oh, cocoa for you, coffee for you." Now, that's. I can't go on. I mean, there were many other things, not many, but there's some that I just lost. I forgot. I'd heard, and I might confuse it with something else.
All right, well, those are
But
pretty
his
good
son
stuff. Yeah.
and daughter.
Yeah.
His son was Yuda Amichai, became Yuda Amichai. Yuda felt that he was truly a great poet. Not a particularly national poet, but a great, what should I say, general poetry. I mean, I don't know anything about it, but his Hebrew was outstanding. It was outstanding. And some of the poems were very touching. It was about his father one, which is a very important one, a great poem, especially about his father during Yom Kippur services, which apparently Friedrich was transported himself to great heights of belief. Anyway, it comes out. As I say, it's a very gripping and touching poem. But in other words, not. I didn't like his development as a nationalist. He wasn't really. He wasn't really totally opposed, but anyway, what can I say? He was brave. Also, he volunteered in World War II. He was in a Jewish unit in Egypt, and there he met his wife, which was the daughter of Dr. Horn, who was the founder of the pharmaceutical company of Teva, what became a major pharmaceutical company. He was a pharmacist, chemist, whatnot, and his daughter was also in the ATS or whatever, women army of the British. And I don't think Friedrich particularly cared, but they did get married, and I know the marriage because I was one of the people who held one of the posts of the chuppah there. So I was there, and I thought she's okay. I had no idea what, nothing particular, no great beauty, not great brain, but a nice person. At which, of course, the story is now heaving off from Friedrich into the Amichai area, because very
Right, well, let's stop there.
Essentially, Friedrich died by that point.
Okay,
at some point.
Let's stop there because I'm worried about room on this.
What should I do?
I'm worried about room on this computer, so we'll stop this video here.
Okay, that's a very bad. You are now missing.